I never thought I'd see the day an HOA officer hit a kid, my kid, in public. And the worst part? He blamed her for it. I turned just in time to see my daughter Emily stumble back, clutching her cheek, and standing over her, red-faced, puffed up, wearing that ridiculous HOA badge even off duty, was Greg Stanton, the self-appointed community standards officer, the man who once fined me for leaving my recycling bin out 6 minutes past. Pickup. He'd just hit my daughter. If you believe bullies always get what's coming, hit subscribe. You're gonna like how this one ends. For a half second I couldn't move. Parents gasped. The lunch lady dropped her ladle. Then I saw Greg's expression shift, not to guilt but to defiance. He actually straightened his polo and muttered, "She shoved me first. Except I knew Emily. She's 16, quiet, runs track, doesn't even raise her voice at the dog. And more importantly, I had something. Greg didn't. A camera. The cafeteria had recently been upgraded with a wall-mounted security cam after a string of petty thefts, and I'd been part of the parent committee that approved it. So while Greg tried to spin his story about accidental contact and kids being disrespectful, I was already checking timestamps in my head. 12:17 p.m. That's when the tray hit. The principal rushed in, flanked by 2 teachers, and led Greg out. The murmur of parents followed him like a storm cloud. Emily sat shaking, eyes glassy, cheek red. I knelt beside her. "You're okay," I said quietly. "He just ended his career." By the time we got home, the gossip wheel had already turned full circle. The HOA Facebook group was buzzing. Misunderstanding. Karen's overreacting. Greg would never. Classic deflection. What they didn't know was that Greg and I had history. 3 months earlier, he'd cited me for unauthorized construction. The offense? Repainting my fence the same color it already was. He'd gone as far as taking photos from my driveway, a violation of privacy. When I called him out, he smiled and said, "Rules are rules, buddy. Maybe read your bylaws." So I did, all 94 pages of them. I printed them, highlighted, annotated, and cross-referenced every clause. Section 3.4, Member Conduct. Section 8.1, Board Ethics. And one line stuck out. Any board member engaging in harassment or physical misconduct toward a resident or their family is subject to immediate removal and civil liability. Greg had just written his resignation letter with his own hand. That night, I pulled the cafeteria footage through a friend at the district's IT department. Chain of custody intact. Copied, sealed, logged. There it was. Greg lunging forward, grabbing Emily's wrist after she accidentally brushed past him in line. Then the slap. Clear as day. I didn't feel rage, just precision. Like setting up a chessboard after watching your opponent brag for months. The next morning I sent 2 emails, one to the school district superintendent, attaching the footage. The second to the HOA board, subject line, formal misconduct complaint. Greg Stanton, video evidence attached. By noon, Greg had called me, twice. I didn't answer. Then he showed up on my porch. He didn't knock. He just stood there, pacing, breathing hard, holding a manila folder. I watched from my ring cam as he looked straight into the lens and said, "You don't know who you're dealing with, oh?" I did. And I was about to make sure the county knew, too. That evening, I met with Deputy Keller from the sheriff's office, the same deputy who'd helped my neighbor last year with a boundary dispute. I showed him the footage, the emails, the HOA charter. He watched silently, then said 5 words that told me this wasn't staying small. "That's assault on a minor." The deputy filed the report. A protective order was drafted. And word spread faster than wildfire through the HOA's group chat. Greg tried to spin it again. Fake video. Deepfake nonsense. Misinterpreted contact. But my evidence was airtight. Timestamp audio, multiple camera angles. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for Friday. Greg still planned to preside as if nothing happened. I planned to attend, with the deputy, a printed transcript, and the video cued on a projector. I wasn't just bringing justice for my daughter. I was bringing a reckoning for every neighbor Greg had ever bullied into silence. Friday came like a slow fuse burning towards something inevitable. The HOA meeting was held in the community clubhouse. Beige walls, stackable chairs, the faint smell of burnt coffee and fake civility. Normally 20 people showed up. That night 40 came. Word travels fast when a self-proclaimed standards officer hits a kid. Greg was already at the front table when I walked in, pretending not to notice the whispering. His right eye was puffed. Apparently, he'd fallen after the cafeteria incident. The bruise didn't bother me. What bothered me was the smirk. "Evening," he said without looking up. "Evening," I replied, placing my folder on the table like a gavel. I had everything tabbed and time-stamped, the video stills, the HOA bylaws, the ethics clause, and an incident report with the sheriff's seal. Precision was my armor. The board president, a mild retiree named Susan, called the meeting to order. "Before we move to agenda items," she began nervously, "Mr. Stanton has requested to address a personal matter." Greg stood, straightened his polo, and turned to face the crowd. "There's been some false information spreading," he said, voice trembling between arrogance and panic. "A video taken out of context. I've served this community for 7 years. You all know me." Someone in the back muttered, "Yeah, that's the problem." He ignored it. "This attack on my reputation is self-inflicted," I cut in, calm but firm. "And documented." Gasps rippled through the room. Susan blinked. "Let's keep order, please," I nodded. "Then let's show the truth." I connected my laptop to the projector. The screen flickered, then froze on the frame everyone had heard about but hadn't seen. Greg's hand raised mid-swing, Emily's face caught in shock. The room went silent except for the faint hum of the ceiling fan. I played it once, then replayed it, zoomed in, timestamp visible in the corner. 12:17:04 p.m. When it ended, nobody moved. Even Susan's lips were tight. Greg opened his mouth, but I spoke first. Section 8.1 of the HOA Charter states any board member who engages in harassment or physical misconduct toward a resident or their family is subject to removal and civil liability. That's not interpretation. That's your own bylaw. I slid a copy of the printed clause across the table. The deputy sitting in the back nodded once, just enough to make Greg notice. The smirk died right there. Susan cleared her throat. "Effective immediately, Mr. Stanton is suspended pending review." I leaned back. "Actually, it's not pending. It's recorded. There's already a sheriff's report on file." Greg's face drained of color. "You can't—" "I already did," I said. "Chain of custody verified, timestamp logged, incident reported." "You're done, Greg." He tried to storm out but caught his sleeve on the edge of the folding table. Papers flew. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was the sound of control slipping away. That night I expected quiet. Instead, my phone buzzed at 2:11 a.m. A notification from the ring cam. Motion detected on the driveway. Greg. He was standing at the edge of my property line, pacing, muttering. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough. Ruined me. "You'll regret—" I sent the clip straight to Deputy Keller. Within 20 minutes, a patrol car was rolling past. Keller texted back, "Documented. Stay inside." By morning, Greg had a restraining order taped to his door. You'd think that'd be the end of it. But bullies don't go quietly, especially ones who mistake power for purpose. 3 days later, I got a letter from the HOA legal counsel, or rather, Greg's cousin, a small-time attorney from 2 towns over. It claimed I'd defamed a public officer and distributed private footage. I almost laughed. Then I got methodical. I drafted a response with the help of a friend, my old college roommate, now a municipal lawyer. We quoted the same bylaws Greg had weaponized against everyone else, and we cited California Penal Code, paragraph 633.5, the clause that explicitly protects recording as evidence in criminal acts. Our letter ended with, "Any further contact, direct or indirect, will be treated as retaliation under Section 9.3 of the HOA Charter and reported as witness intimidation." Within 48 hours, the attorney withdrew. Still, I wanted closure, not just punishment. I wanted transparency. So I filed a formal records request with the HOA under member disclosure rights. It took a week, but what came back made me see the pattern clear as glass. Greg had a history. 3 written complaints for harassment, 1 for stalking a teenager taking photos for a school project. All quietly resolved. He'd been a ticking bomb the board ignored. I compiled every document, dated and indexed them, then sent the file, Stanton Misconduct Dossier.pdf, to the county's HOA Regulatory Review Office. A week later, an investigator called. "We're opening an ethics inquiry," she said. "You've done half our job already." Meanwhile, life in the neighborhood shifted. People who'd once whispered now waved. 2 families who'd been fined by Greg for unapproved mailbox colors thanked me in person. Someone even baked a pie and left it on my porch, the unofficial HOA symbol of truce. Emily started sleeping better. Her cheek healed. Her laughter came back. But she still flinched when she saw Greg's truck parked down the road. Engine off. That's when I decided on one last move. The sting. I placed an AirTag inside a fake envelope addressed to HOA Appeals Division. I left it in my mailbox overnight. Unlocked. The next morning, the envelope was gone. The AirTag pinged, guess where? Greg's truck. Deputy Keller didn't even need me to explain. "We've got him on mail tampering now," he said. That night, under porch lights and a chorus of crickets, Greg was escorted off the property, hands cuffed, face pale. He wasn't crying because he'd lost power. He was crying because he finally realized power didn't mean immunity. The HOA board called an emergency session that weekend. They voted unanimously to remove Greg and issued a public apology to the community. Susan read it herself. "We failed to uphold the standards we enforce. This board will implement new safeguards. Effective immediately." I didn't clap. I just nodded. Justice wasn't loud. It was precise. The following week, the county ethics hearing was scheduled in a low-ceilinged conference room behind the courthouse. Fluorescent lights, gray carpet, every sound amplified by the stillness of bureaucratic justice. Greg arrived late, wearing a wrinkled sport coat and sunglasses he didn't need. His lawyer, not the cousin this time, a public defender, looked tired. Across from them sat me, Deputy Keller, and a representative from the county's HOA Oversight Division. The chairwoman began without preamble. "Mr. Stanton, you are under review for misconduct, assault, evidence tampering, and harassment of a minor. Do you understand the charges?" He mumbled, "Yes." She nodded toward me. "Mr. Davis, please present your materials." I opened my binder, 3 inches thick, color-coded tabs, every page dated. The video stills came first, then the AirTag tracking report, then the HOA complaint records. Every document was a nail. By the time I finished, the chairwoman's pen had stopped moving. Greg's lawyer cleared his throat. "My client has expressed remorse." "Where was that remorse?" the chairwoman interrupted. "When he trespassed at 2 a.m. When he intercepted HOA correspondence," Greg stammered. I just wanted to explain." "On camera?" she asked. Silence. Deputy Keller leaned forward. "We have the footage, ma'am." The defendant was warned, ignored a lawful order, and attempted to retrieve property from a resident's mailbox. "That's a federal offense. That broke him." His voice cracked. The same man who once strutted through neighborhood. Barbecues handing out citations for lawn height. Violations, now wiping his nose on his sleeve. "I lost everything," he muttered. "No," I said quietly. Few threw it away. The panel deliberated for 15 minutes. When they returned, the ruling was unanimous. Immediate removal from the HOA board, permanent ban from serving in any governing position in the county, and a referral for prosecution on the assault and tampering charges. Greg slumped forward, hands over his face. The tears weren't about guilt. They were about exposure. That's when I understood something. Bullies aren't afraid of punishment. They're afraid of documentation. Outside reporters waited. Not the national kind, but local. The Riverton Ledger and Channel 8 News. Someone had tipped them off. I didn't mind. The segment ran that evening. HOA officer removed after assaulting teen. Residents' evidence leads to criminal charges. It wasn't dramatic. No chase scenes or police lights. Just facts, clear and irrefutable. The same clarity Greg had mocked me for. By the weekend, he'd moved out. His house, was once the model home for compliance perfection, sat dark, mailbox stuffed, grass overgrown. The irony didn't miss anyone. The HOA reformed within a month. New board, new policies, transparency log posted online. Meetings that used to be power plays turned into something rare. Civil. At the first reconstituted session, Susan approached me. "You should have joined the board," she said. I shook my head. "I do better on the outside. Less politics, more proof," she smiled faintly. "Still, thank you. What you did, it reset this place." I looked around at the neighbors, chatting, laughing, no longer walking on eggshells. For the first time, the HOA felt like what it was supposed to be. Not a fiefdom, but a community. At home, Emily sat on the porch, headphones around her neck. She looked up when I came out. "So," she said, "did they finally get him?" "Completely," I said. "He can't even file a noise complaint now without supervision." She smiled, the first real one since that day in the cafeteria. "Good, he deserved it." I nodded. "You know what he really hated?" "What?" "That we stayed calm. He wanted a fight. We gave him evidence," she laughed. "That's your version of revenge." "Justice," I corrected. "Revenge leaves room for doubt. Justice leaves paperwork." A few weeks later, a letter arrived. Official seal from the county prosecutor's office. Greg had accepted a plea deal. Community service, mandatory anger management, and a 2-year restraining order. I showed it to Emily. She folded it once, then said, "Guess he's got a lot of lawns to mow now." I couldn't help it. I laughed. The kind of laugh that releases months of quiet tension. Then something unexpected happened. A man knocked on my door one morning, older, tall, wearing a faded maintenance uniform. "You don't know me," he said, "but I used to work for the HOA under Greg, maintenance coordinator." I nodded slowly. He handed me a small USB drive. "This might matter. It's the security footage from the storage unit Greg used, the one behind the clubhouse. He told us to wipe it, but I backed it up first. You might want to see." I plugged it in later that night. The file showed Greg storing boxes labeled Board Records Confidential. Inside, dozens of unpaid vendor invoices, falsified receipts, and, most damning, signed HOA checks made out to himself for consulting services. Fraud dart. I forwarded the evidence to the investigator I'd worked with. Her reply came 2 hours later. "This changes everything." 2 months later, Greg faced additional charges, embezzlement and falsification of HOA records. His fall became official. The story that had started with a cafeteria slap ended with an audit report. It took half a year for things to settle completely. Emily graduated, the HOA restructured, and life resumed its quiet rhythm. Morning jogs, trimmed lawns, kids on bikes instead of parents on guard. Sometimes people still stop me at the mailbox. "You're the guy who took down the HOA bully," they say. I just smile. "No, I'm the guy who read the bylaws." Epilogue. The lesson: if you've ever dealt with a neighbor who abuses power, remember this: you don't win by yelling louder. You win by documenting smarter. Every rule they use against you can be reversed if you understand it better than they do. Boundaries aren't about fences or fines. They're about respect, recorded and enforced. And if someone ever tells you, "You don't know who you're dealing with," smile, because you probably do, and you've already hit record. So to everyone watching, don't let intimidation live rent-free in your neighborhood. Stand your ground with proof, patience, and persistence. Drop your own HOA or neighbor nightmare in the comments. I read every one. And if you believe in calm, tactical justice, subscribe. More stories are coming.